power of God's Word is extraordinary, and it can go across boundaries. And in this high-tech world, our staff launch radios on balloons when the wind is right and drift them over North Korea.
Welcome to First Person. I'm Wayne Shepherd, and today's program comes to you from Seoul, South Korea. It was recorded as I traveled in 2013 with colleagues from the Far East Broadcasting Company and National Religious Broadcasters. I'll explain the purpose of our trip and introduce today's guests in just a minute. Each week's first-person conversation is archived online for your convenience, so you can listen to any current or previous program. Just visit our website, firstpersoninterview.com, and click on the Listen button for the complete list of interviews, which you can play at any time. Again, that's firstpersoninterview.com. Well, here's what you'll hear on today's program. Ed Cannon, president of the Far East Broadcasting Company, invited several U.S. broadcasters, including myself, Bill Blount, and Rich Bott, to be part of a delegation to the dedication of a beautiful new building in South Korea to be used by the Far East Broadcasting Company radio ministry, reaching not only both Koreas, but also Russia, Japan, and China. After the building dedication, the four of us met to talk about what we had just witnessed.
Well, Wayne, we've just spent 2.5 days celebrating the dedication of the new FEBC Korea headquarters in Seoul, Korea. I'm here with my friends Bill Blount and Rich Bott, and we've celebrated with Billy Kim and numerous of his staff.
Yeah, I don't know how you feel about it. I don't know if I can put into words what we've been through the last few days. It has been spectacular, hasn't it?
I don't know how many people, Wayne, have been introduced to us as former presidents of Korea, Senate members, cabinet members, Congress members, presidents of universities, presidents of companies.
George Bush sent a video greeting. Health prevented him from coming. Billy Graham sent a spokesman. His health prevented him from coming. But this was a world-class event.
It certainly is. And I think it's actually celebrating what I believe to be a world-class ministry. Mm-hmm. FEBC Korea has been broadcasting the gospel to this nation of South Korea for well over 50 years. And they've come from a very poor upstart garage operation radio ministry to 13 very large FM radio stations that blanket the Christian nation of South Korea and broadcast from South Korea all across Japan, Russia, China, and well down into the South Pacific.
So South Korea is a broadcasting hub for FEBC, reaching into those other surrounding nations. It's amazing, the ministry here and this new building that God has provided through the donations of listeners in Korea and even North Korea. Donations came from that country as well, surprisingly.
Donations have been 95%, Wayne, from people in South Korea who listen to the radio stations and support their local radio stations, but wanted to be involved with ministry beyond South Korea. And now they physically support these broadcasts into Japan and Russia and China because they've got a mission to spread the gospel to the entire world.
And just in case someone is wondering, yes, this is the same Far East Broadcasting Company that was founded by Bob Bowman and a couple of other men 60 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. Billy Kim told the story in front of this large audience that it was from an initial gift by Bob Bowman and a promise that he would continue to support FEBC Korea that they got started. They merged with several other small Christian broadcasters in Asia to begin, but it was Bob Bowman's gift and promise and continued support that launched this ministry in Korea.
Well, we've got both Bill and Rich here with us today. Rich, let me start with you. Like me, this was your first trip to South Korea, and so I'm anxious to get some of your impressions of not only being in the country, but being a part of FEBC here.
Well, thank you, Wayne. It was such a thrill to see the enthusiasm of the Christian people of Korea. As you well know, we got up very early to attend a 6 a.m. prayer meeting, and there was some 3 or 4 or maybe 5,000, I don't know the exact number. It was a huge, huge crowd in this very, very large church for a 1-hour prayer meeting, and they do that every day.
Yeah, let's make it clear. That wasn't a special prayer meeting called because of the celebration. That happens every day here.
I know, and we've talked about the explosive growth of the church in Korea, and I've always heard that a revival is always preceded by a movement of prayer, and that's what I was seeing when I attended that prayer meeting. I thought, this is the fuel that creates the revival that the Lord can bless and honor, and I am so delighted to know that it was FEBC and that initial radio station that has now become multiple radio stations all across the nation of Korea and reaching into other nations in that part of Asia, which is really exciting. I met the lady that is in charge of FEBC for Japan, and she actually broadcasts to the entire 140 million people of Japan from Korea. And it's just wonderful that the Lord is doing this in our lifetime, and I'm just excited to have a chance to see it, and I want to be a part of it.
Ed, you've seen and visited that ministry in Japan.
I have indeed, Wayne, and every time I think about it, I get chills up my spine. It's a very, very small, yet very, very dedicated staff of people who reach out every single day on a radio station to this largely unchurched nation of Japan, and the responses they're getting from all across Japan are just amazing. The hunger from that nation for the truth of the gospel of Jesus Christ couldn't be stronger. And this tiny, humble little staff of dedicated people continue to serve by proclaiming the gospel. The lady that Rich has mentioned has been on the radio every week, 5 days a week, for 44 years.
How about that? That's amazing. And Rich, I'm so glad you mentioned that prayer meeting. That was one of the highlights for me as well. Well, Bill, we're going to continue this round table conversation here, so to speak, but I want to get your first impressions about this trip.
Well, this is the second time I have been to South Korea, but this was the most exciting time I have been to South Korea.
Why?
Because I got to see firsthand how the Lord is using Christian radio, and this is the first time I've seen that exposure. And I tried to think, now, how do you explain the success of this tremendous radio ministry and how it's affected this country, where literally thousands and thousands of people have come to Christ, and even government officials acknowledge the fact that this radio station is affecting the entire country. So how do you explain that? And Rich already alluded to it. It's because it's built on a foundation. And you can't have a strong ministry, you can't have a good building unless you have a good foundation under it. And we saw the foundation firsthand. It starts at, at 5 a.m.? The first prayer meeting's at 5 a.m.
With thousands of people.
Thousands of people.
Not just one church, many churches.
Many churches throughout the whole city. And then, of course, we went to the 6 o'clock service. And as alluded to, I mean, thousands of people. And
we were too wimpy to get up at 5. So.
You think of our prayer meetings back in the United States, and you get the faithful 10 or 10% maybe of the church congregation. But here, thousands of people come and pray every single day, and it's on that foundation that the Lord has built this tremendous ministry that is not only reaching Korea, which was exciting, and to hear some of the surrounding regions. But as Billy Kim mentioned, and as kind of the whole program moved forward, their heart's desire is they want to reach the world.
Yeah.
They're not limiting themselves to Korea or to Asia. They're looking to the world to reach the world for Christ.
Isn't that amazing? Now, we've all worked in Christian radio in North America for many years. I mean, the combined experience in this room adds up to a lot of years. But what are you going to take home? What did you learn about radio? I'm going to ask both of you guys, Bill and Rich. Rich, you want to start that one?
Sure, Wayne. When we landed at the Incheon airport and were driving to Seoul, the driver was driving us to Seoul, and the FEBC people were so gracious and kind to us. I asked them to turn on the FEBC radio station, and I heard a radio station that was very professionally run, quality voices, quality production, quality breaks. It just sounded very first class. And then there was a drama, a radio drama segment of testimonies. Now, of course, I couldn't understand the language, but I'm listening to this as with a radio person's ear, and I could tell that this was a quality radio station with a solid signal. There wasn't a lot of static and that type of thing. It was a very strong signal. And then I heard a familiar theme song. I didn't recognize the voice. I didn't recognize the language, but it was the Korean version of Through the Bible with J. Vernon McGee. And then I found out that so many of the Bible teaching ministries ministries that we feature in the United States are translated into the Korean language, and the Korean people get to hear the same good quality Bible teaching. And that is just thrilling to me to know that we are part of this. We are one link in the chain, but we're part of the same chain that is proclaiming the gospel message of Jesus Christ in this generation. And I'm excited to see what the Lord is doing and looking forward to what He will do.
Bill, you have traveled many places in the world for various ministries, and when I get the chance to travel, I like to think about the bridge back. You know, what can they teach us? It's not so much what we teach them; it's what they have to tell us about how to do things with excellence and do things right. So, what are some of your thoughts about that?
Well, along with what Rich said, just the quality, the professionalism. I think sometimes in America we think that we do it best, and the rest of the world has to learn from us.
We lead, they follow.
That's right.
I'm learning it's the other way around many times.
But we've been now exposed to enough of these international ministries to say, wow, they can teach us things. They're doing things more on the cutting edge than we are.
Yeah.
And I love the way that it's not just broadcasting out. It's really a two-way street. They're interacting with their community, with their officials, and really making it a complete countrywide effect, one with another. And that's to make it the most effective is when it's a two-way street, not a one-way street.
I wanted to add to that, if you remember the celebration concert that we attended in what was it called? The Peace Square? What was that called, Bill? It was a memorial area to the Korean War, but you said interacting with the community. There were choirs from all of these different radio stations. They have radio stations in many different cities across the Korean peninsula, and they had each sent choirs from their vicinity, from their area, and there were women's choirs and youth choirs and quite a number of children's choirs, and each time they sang, they were in their traditional attire, the costumes from that particular area. It was just thrilling to hear and see, and then at the end, they all got together on the platform, and together they sang Jesus Loves Me in my language that, of course, I could understand, and it drove me to tears. I couldn't hold back the tears. And then as they were singing, the young people, the children, came forward and gave us a hug and they either said, I love you or God bless you, as they hugged our necks. And it was just marvelous to realize the love of Jesus reaches around the world.
We'll continue this conversation, our report from Seoul, South Korea, on the ministry of FEBC coming up. First Person has partnered with Mission Aviation Fellowship to make available to you a free copy of the classic book Jungle Pilot, telling the life story of early missionary aviation pilot Nate Saint and the pioneering work of MAF. I've narrated this special audio edition of Jungle Pilot, and a free download is available at firstpersoninterview.com. Your whole family will enjoy listening to Jungle Pilot. To download, visit firstpersoninterview.com. I have three guests with me today. First of all, Ed Cannon is with Far East Broadcasting Company. Ed serves on the executive committee of the National Religious Broadcasters. Bill Blount of Life Changing Radio is with us. Bill also serves on the executive committee of NRB. And the chairman of NRB, Rich Bott of the Bott Radio Network, is with me as well. And we all are on this trip to South Korea, witnessing firsthand what God is doing in this tremendous country, both locally here in Korea and throughout part of Northeast Asia. Ed, let me come back to you and talk about this trip. We're back in our hotel room now, but we've had this wonderful celebration in South Korea, in Seoul, the capital city, a huge city, beautiful city. The amazing thing to me was to see how fast this city has sprung up since the Korean War and what God is doing in this country spiritually.
It is a huge and very modern city. And as you noticed, Wayne, we mentioned earlier all these international guests that showed up to honor FEBC Korea and Dr. Billy Kim on the accomplishment and the dedication of this building, and the hundreds of FEBC staff that showed up to so graciously and humbly serve these people. It was a testimony in and of itself to what FEBC is, to see the way these people were serving their guests from the outside. And when I look at that whole connection between staff, donors, and listeners, it reminds me of actually the way FEBC operates in their country. We have 13 FM stations around South Korea. All of those staff were here. all of those staff have actually adopted other countries with their outreach mission to the radio stations in that country. And at one point, behind the scenes of the celebration, they presented the collection of their individual staff to their country station that they've adopted. And so I could go on and on telling you the way these stations serve beyond themselves to reach the world with Christ.
Yeah. Bill, build on what Ed was saying, what we learned about how radio is done in South Korea and the effective ministry it seems to us to be.
Well, as Ed suggested, each station runs separately, but they all have a common theme. The common theme is to present the gospel in a quality, professional way. The common theme is to reach out into their community. They involve their community, and their community responds. They respond by supporting the station, by involving other people to listen. You know what a great evangelism tool it is to have one person say, "Hey, listen to this radio station. I found some answers." People are looking for answers today because it's so confusing. Nobody really has answers. The Bible has the answer, and when they tune into these radio stations, they get the answers to their life that they've been looking for, they're searching for. And so it's thrilling to see how these stations are reaching into their own communities, bringing people to Christ, bringing hope into their communities.
And Rich, we rub shoulders with so many of the staff. As Ed said, they came from all over South Korea to Seoul to celebrate this victory together and to serve us in many ways, and we appreciate them so much. It was obvious this is a very professional staff, a young staff, but very professional, and very much their heart is in this mission.
Very much their heart is in this mission, and I wanted to give tribute to Dr. Billy Kim and what a wonderful lifetime of service and dedication he has had for the cause of Christ. And as a houseboy orphan that was adopted by a GI back and taken back to the States following the war, where he heard the gospel and committed his life to the Lord, and then went back to Korea to begin this ministry, and it has just been terrific to see how the Lord has blessed that lifetime of faithfulness and obedience, and how so many other people have come along to be a part of that. But I think Dr. Billy Kim was really the spark plug that helped to make it happen, and then so many people have rallied to the cause as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. We think about the start that Dr. Billy Kim had. You're exactly right, Rich. A houseboy orphan during the war, serving U.S. GIs. They adopted him. He actually just spoke at the funeral of the man that brought him back from the Korean War as he passed on to be with the Lord. But there was another circumstance in Dr. Billy Kim's past where he became, at a very, very young age, the translator for Billy Graham, who came to do a massive crusade in Korea. And that's how Dr. Billy Kim really got his start, was translating for Billy Graham as he did crusades throughout Korea.
I don't remember the year that it happened, but I remember the photo that was taken of that gigantic crowd.
I know the very photo you're talking about, Wayne. There was an enormous crowd and a very tall Billy Graham and a very short Billy Kim standing on a box, proclaiming Christ to 1 million people. And that's where he got his enthusiasm. That's where he got his start.
Yeah. Well, of course, we've all known the name Billy Kim for many years and perhaps have had a chance to talk to him briefly through the years as he's come to the States. But to see Dr. Kim on his home turf in Korea, South Korea, and to hear his heartbeat for this nation and for the reunification of South Korea with North Korea, that's something the church prays about.
That's right. And I think we should never think that as Christians we cannot be known in the public and in a good way. When we walk through South Korea with Dr. Billy Kim, isn't it interesting, Wayne? It doesn't seem that there's anyone who doesn't know him and doesn't honor the work he's done. It's a noble work here in South Korea that everyone honors, proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ through FEBC radio.
Yeah. Now, Bill, you and I and Rich Bott here had the opportunity to go to the DMZ zone. Ed, you were busy with other responsibilities, but we had the opportunity to go to the DMZ between North and South Korea, and what a powerful experience to peer into that communist country and to see the contrast between North and South Korea. Bill, talk about that for a moment.
I was struck at the stark difference between the two countries. North Korea being a very closed country, a dark country.
The most closed countries.
Most closed country, and a godless country. I mean, they don't want God. In fact, the only God they consider is the president. You know, they used to worship Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il as God the Father, God the Son. But they don't acknowledge God. It's a godless society. And look what's happened to the country. It's closed. It's poor. It's depressed. Just across the border, you go into South Korea, where the name of the Lord is lifted up. And look at the difference it's made in that country. It is one of the premier countries of the world. It's one of the leading countries in sending missionaries around the world. It's lifting its brothers and sisters around the world up. And the stark difference, Wayne, when you and I were standing there at the DMZ looking over into North Korea and knowing what was going on there, and then we just turn around and see what's going on in South Korea, what a stark difference the Lord can make in somebody's life.
I think the image that I will remember from that day in the DMZ zone was looking into North Korea and seeing the giant radio TV tower there that was for one purpose. Its purpose was to jam the radio and TV signals from South Korea from reaching North Korea. To me, that still brings a chill to me to think about that's happening today in that spot. All right, we have just a minute left. So final word from you, men. Rich, can I turn to you?
Oh, just once again, I just want to say it was such a blessing to witness firsthand the enthusiasm for the gospel of the Christian people there in Korea. They were a real blessing to me.
It's thrilling for me to see the Lord working such a powerful way. Sometimes we can get discouraged as Christians. But to see the Lord working in a powerful way gives me great enthusiasm to know that we can take that back to where we live and broadcast the gospel with the same enthusiasm they do.
Yeah. Ed, I think I speak for Rich and Bill when I say thank you for the invitation to come here and see this firsthand. This fuels us to go back and do our ministry that the Lord has given us with energy and excellence.
Well, it was a real honor to have all three of you here with us in Korea at this time. And I'll close, Wayne, by just saying, you mentioned the vision of Dr. Billy Kim and FEBC Korea, and I'll compliment our founder, Dr. Bob Bowman, who was at Billy Kim's side when he started FEBC Korea, and he simply stated the vision for our organization as this: we're to take Christ to the world by radio. 70 years later, that is what FEBC Korea and every country within FEBC is continuing to do. We don't need a fresh, compelling new vision. We're sticking to that because the power of God's word is so much greater than anything man can dream of, that it's that simple. So thanks a lot, all three of you, for coming, and God bless you all.
My special thanks to my friends Ed Cannon, Rich Bott, and Bill Blount for gathering together with me in a hotel room in Asia after a long day so we could give you a report of what we saw and heard. Since our recording, Bill has been elected as chairman of the NRB, replacing Rich, who served a full term. As you've heard, this group of longtime radio veterans from the U.S. were completely impressed with what God is doing through the staff of Korea's Far East Broadcasting Company, which is just one part of FEBC's ministry in nearly 50 countries in over 100 languages. For more about FEBC and its ministry not only in Asia but in other parts of the world as well, please visit our website, firstpersoninterview.com, where you'll find a link to FEBC, including several videos from different countries. That's firstpersoninterview.com. Next week, you'll meet Bruce Sonnenberg of He Intends Victory, a ministry to those suffering the consequences of HIV/AIDS. Now, with thanks to my friend and producer Joe Carlson, I'm Wayne Shepherd. Thanks for listening today, and I hope you'll join us again next time for First Person.